Hi there, Altenew friends. Welcome back to another Perfect Pairings with Jaycee. The Perfect Pairing series is a video feature where I will focus on a new product and pair it with an older favorite or one that you have yet to discover. I love hearing what some of your favorites are, and I would like to feature them on this series. So make sure you comment on your older Altenew favorites below and subscribe if you haven't already. Before we get into the 3 card ideas, if you're familiar with my channel or other videos on the Altenew channel, my work surface looks slightly different. Aside from the new stamp die Stencil January 2020 release, is this Altenew self-healing cutting mat. I'm going to zoom out a little bit to show you the full cutting mat. You can tell this product was designed with paper crafters in mind by several features in this mat. First, this huge mat has a workable surface of 22 by 16 inches and a footprint of about 23.5 by 17 3/4. The reverse side is in metric units and is light gray. Since I record a bit of video content, I love that the surface is non-reflective, so there's no more worrying about the reflection of my arm or face showing up in my footage. Lastly, there is a center alignment grid for a 4 1/4 by 5.5 card front, portrait or landscape, as well as a 12 by 12 grid for scrapbooking. This is going to be excellent for planning placement, as I will show you all in a second. Okay, so let's get into the pairing. Here I have Altenew Mod Vases Stamp, Die, and Mask Stencil set. This is a 6x8 stamp set with these solid layering vases with a mod twist. Pair these with any of the many gorgeous Altenew florals and you have yourself a stunning potted bouquet scene. Today I will use one of your suggestions and pair mod vases with Altenew Rose Flurries 3D die set. Now, an additional challenge I placed on myself was to use as few wet mediums such as markers and dye ink as necessary, focusing solely on die cut elements. So to do all my die cutting, I'll use Altenew's mini blossom die cutting machine with accompanying cutting plates as well as this metal shim to help with the really intricate dies. So for this first card example, I'm going to grab these 2 3/4 by 4.5 panels of white cardstock. I have a stack of these A2 panels cut in half because I know they will fit nicely into my mini blossom die cutting platform without trimming. I'll use Altenew ink spray in jet black to create fine splatters all over these 4 panels. I'm looking for a dense robin's egg pattern on these panels. I'll let these panels dry and grab these 3 dies from the Mod Vases accompanying die set. I'm going to die cut these black and white panels and cut the vases in half with some scissors to give me petite ornate vases. I did not need nearly as many vases as I have here. I really only needed 8 half vases. So once I have all those elements, I'll set them aside and work on the Rose Flurries 3D flowers. If you are a longtime owner of the layering flower dies or thinking about adding them to your collection, the gradient cardstock packs are a must-have when using the 3D die sets. In this card example, I'll be using the Cherry Blossom family of papers, and off camera I've added a wide strip of double-sided tape to help glue down all the layers. This double-sided tape is fairly thick behind the colored cardstock, but it's nothing the mini blossom metal shim can't handle. So I won't show you all the die cutting and assembling steps, but I will walk you through one flower if this is your first time seeing the 3D die sets. First, I'll simply cut the layers of the flower following the cutting guide. You'll notice the color layering is opposite of what you would do with layering inks. The darkest layer is the most solid layer in these flowers, and the lightest cardstock is the topmost layer. I've kept the packaging that accompanies these dies just so I know what order the dies go in. Now, following the layering guide, I'll layer the adhesive-backed die cuts. You can start from the lightest layer or the darkest layer. I like to start from the bottom to the top so that there is more paper for me to hold as I build the flower instead of manipulating a fine piece of cardstock. Okay, so here are all my card elements. I have my vases, flowers, and off camera I die cut these leaf bundles from the same Rose Flurries 3D die set. I'm going to create little potted roses with a few leaves, then use the 4 1/4 by 5.5 centering grid on the Altenew cutting mat to plan the placement of these little bouquets. I'll add leaves as needed to help fill in the space between the flowers. You can tell that this Altenew cutting mat was made by like-minded paper crafters because not only is it a functional mat, but it is intuitive as well. So now that I have my potted flowers arranged, I'll use Glad Press and Seal to pick everyone up at the same time and apply glue on the back. I'll realign the potted flowers to my centering guide on the cutting mat, and instead of flipping the press and seal back onto my card base, I'll align the card base to the alignment grid and press my card base to the back of the flowers. Before the glue completely sets, I'll make quick adjustments to the flowers to ensure even spacing. Now, I did introduce another wet element to this card, which is the heat embossed sentiment, but I thought this thanks a bunch sentiment complemented the bunches of flowers on this card. I foam mounted and tiered the 3 sentiment strips on the center of my card, and that finishes the first example using mod vases and rose flurries. You'll probably be able to sense a Valentine's Day theme with these cards. Oh, and I did have one lonely flower vase left over, so I quickly made this last card embellished with embroidery floss, enamel dots, and my favorite embossing label maker. Okay, now for the second example, I'm going to start with mod vases again and grab these 3 vase dies. I had a leftover black splatter panel, and I'll use it on this card project as well as one plain scrap piece of white cardstock. Once I have my vases cut and planned using the alignment guide, I'll use the small cluster of flowers from Rose Flurries and essentially create a die cut inlay to give these vases some texture. This isn't truly a die cut inlay, this is more of a die cut, I guess. After creating a few cuts with the smaller cluster of flowers, I die cut another layer of solid colored cardstock from the Summer Afternoon gradient papers and adhered it behind the white vases. I did end up inlaying the centers of the flowers just so that the vases didn't look too abstract. I did the same with the smaller vase and glued down the vases to a panel of this Birch Wood specialty paper from Altenew. The sentiment comes from the Signature Words die set, and I embellished this card with the Pocket Full of Sunshine enamel dot set. This is a quick and easy vase scene, and it didn't take too long at all to make. I love the mix of textures on this card, but onto the last card project featuring this pairing. For this last example, I'll use the Red Cosmos gradient papers and the Rose Flurries layering dies to create an arrangement. Now, I won't show you any of this since I'm simply following the layering guide and the steps I used from the first card example. So essentially my scene comprises of a cluster of flowers and leaves surrounding a vase. I love modifying the die cuts to give me individual leaves. So I'm cutting apart the branch to give me an asymmetrical arrangement around this white vase from Mod Vases. So I'm cutting apart the branches to help give me an asymmetrical arrangement around this white vase from Mod Vases. I'll take a piece of black cardstock and add white splatters using the pure white ink spray. Once this panel is dry, I'll adhere this two-tone bronze mirror vase to my white splatter card front. I made this by cutting 2 vases, one in white cardstock and one in bronze mirror cardstock. Then I cut the mirror cardstock at an angle and adhered it to the white vase. Then after that, I adhered all the floral elements down, as well as this banner I made using my favorite embossing label maker again. I thought the sentiment was fitting for the scene inspired by perfume ads. So that's it. Mod Vases and Rose Flurries die sets are a perfect pairing. There's so much dimension to these layered cards, and they're the perfect example on shopping your Altenew stash. If you loved this perfect pairing, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, share it with your Altenew friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. Product links can be found in the description box, and while you're there, please share your perfect pairings ideas with me under my comment below. Thank you so much for tuning in to another Perfect Pairings with Jaycee, and I'll see you in the next one.